Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to be talking about specifically what it means to have your Saturn in Scorpio or Saturn in the 8th house. My name is Brandon. This is part of a much larger video series that I am working on here, where I go through every single planet and every single sign and house. So this is the Saturn in Scorpio video, as well as Saturn in the 8th house. So I have a playlist down below where you can check out all the videos I've already made. So I've done every planet between Sun and Saturn. So Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn in every sign prior to Scorpio in the 8th house. So Aries through Libra or the 1st through the 7th house are all already made. So if you have any of those placements, I would recommend you check that out down below. And if you don't know if you even have any of those placements, there is a link down below that you can use to generate your birth chart so you can get a better idea of if you have these placements or not. So just know that that's something that you can definitely look into. And also, I am going to be talking about this video in a couple of different portions here. So there's going to be a portion specifically about Saturn and astrology, then Saturn within Scorpio, and then Saturn within the 8th house. So if you have Saturn in Scorpio but not in the 8th house, you can check out specific portions for that. Or if you're looking for someone with Saturn in Scorpio, or you're looking to get more information about them or information about Saturn in the 8th house, I don't know why you would want to do that, because that's a whole different other conversation, considering this is Scorpio and the 8th house energy. There's a lot that we're going to be talking about. So just make sure that you check out those playlists down, or the playlist down below for other information, but then also the timestamps for when I talk about what. And then, of course, if you're interested in anything with me, feel free to check out down below. My offerings, my courses, my readings, all those things are down there. So feel free to check that out as well. Yeah, that's pretty much the intro for the most part here. Yeah, I'm really excited. This week has been really, really fun. It's been a really interesting week as it relates to doing Scorpio. It is a very intense energy. It's actually one of my favorite energies to do, and this week has been quite difficult in recording that process, but in very Scorpionic nature, it's been quite a difficult week, but it has been something that has been super on brand for Scorpio, and I am so excited to be doing this video here today. I'm so grateful to be able to share my knowledge, honestly. So without further ado, let's go into what Saturn means within astrology. So Saturn in astrology is considered to be the more, the larger benefic of the larger malefic of the two malefic planets, meaning that we have Mars and Saturn are more malefic or more difficult or more karmic in a lot of ways. A lot of the chart is karmic. Almost all of the chart is from a karmic perspective, but a lot of the times, a lot of people fear Saturn, and we work around Saturn, and we try and understand how to utilize it. And the thing about Saturn in general is it's going to have a kind of arduous, long journey that it's going to put you on related to the signs and house placement that Saturn is in. So Saturn is all about hard work. It's all about patience. It's all about stuff that takes a long time. So there is a sense of somewhat of a little bit of trauma in this regard, but it's trauma because you have not mastered the skill enough, or you haven't done the time, you haven't understood the context, and the only way to do that is to gather the evidence and to live through the actual progression of time. Saturn rules time. It rules that sort of chronological process. And so anything that is related to time or structure or long-term things, or anything related to elders or older people or structural things, or businesses or bosses or careers, are all going to be related to Saturn. There is a lot of career aspirations with Saturn. It rules that area of the chart. It rules the natural 10th house as well as the natural 11th house. So there's a lot to do with our aspirations, what we strive for in life, as well as what our career is, what place we want to have in the world, and how we, like, what we prescribe and kind of give our power to, but not in a way that is like necessarily in the philosophical way all the time, but more in the, I need to get to this top. I need to be powerful. I need to work towards this career. I need to work towards this goal. And that's the thing with Saturn and Scorpio. It's going to have or Saturn in general, I'm sorry. It's going to have a desire to work hard, and it's going to be very difficult to learn the lesson that Saturn is really wanting. But as you learn it, you're going to realize that you have a lot of power in that specific area, in that specific avenue, as it relates to Saturn. You're going to have a lot of hard work you're going to have to do, but it's because that's part of one of the most key things that you're here to do on this planet, is related to your Saturn sign and the Saturn aspects as well. Understanding what Saturn is doing and what Saturn's kind of talking to is, yes, it's going to be something that you're going to be struggling with and working towards, and having to be patient with that process. The whole idea of Rome isn't built in a day is a very Saturn-related saying and Saturn-related kind of phrase. With Saturn as well, there is an aspect of like I said, what you're here to do on this planet and this Earth. And typically what ends up happening with Saturn, I ended up doing a podcast episode with another astrologer, so check that out down below about Saturn cycles, because there is, we did a really long conversation there, so make sure to check that out. The Saturn return around the ages of 28 to 30 are going to have a lot of context for what you're here to do. It's kind of that seeding moment, that new kind of rebirth of your responsibilities and all that, and all things that you want to do for career and what you're here to kind of ground into. So there is a sense of grounding and responsibility and knowing your place in the world when it comes to Saturn during the Saturn return. And I think prior to the Saturn return, a lot of people struggle with understanding what that is, understanding what they're responsible for and what their karmic lesson is. But then they come into that as Saturn transits its own sign once again, about 28, 30 years after you're born. So yeah, and then there is those main cycles between 7, so 7 years, 14, 21, 28 are all going to kind of be relative to Saturn, as well as 35, 42, 50, things like that are all going to kind of have their own sorts of conversations around Saturn, but that's neither here nor there. That's its own thing. Saturn does naturally rule Capricorn and Aquarius, so therefore it is not as comfortable in the signs opposite that, which are Cancer and Leo. And then Saturn is considered to be exalted in the sign of Libra, which also means that it is considered to be fallen in the sign of Aries, which is the sign opposite of its exaltation, meaning that, and those are all videos that I've done already, so you are more than welcome to watch any of those videos outside of the Capricorn Aquarius ones, because I haven't done those yet, just to understand more about how Saturn works within those specific signs and how it tends to function in regards to giving career, giving responsibility, those sorts of things. So that's Saturn in astrology. And without further ado, let's go into the meat and the nitty gritty of it all, which is Saturn in Scorpio. So let's talk about what Saturn looks like for someone that has Saturn in Scorpio. All right, so Saturn in Scorpio, the lessons around this Saturn are going to be quite prominent, quite loud, in a way that is very difficult to come to terms with. Something I meant to mention earlier about Saturn in astrology is that if you have a heavy prominent Capricorn or Aquarius placement, so either Capricorn rising or Aquarius rising or Capricorn sun or Aquarius sun, you're going to have a lot more connection to the energy of Saturn naturally. And so just know that if you have your Saturn in Scorpio and you have prominent energies in regards to that, Capricorn Aquarius, know that this is going to kind of impact you a little bit deeper in ways that it wouldn't otherwise. And there are Capricorn risings that have Saturn in Scorpio. There are Aquarius risings that have Saturn in Scorpio as well. So just be aware that there are ways that this can manifest, especially if you have that particular combination. So just know about that as well. Now, moving on from here, the Saturn in Scorpio lesson. This is a doozy. This is definitely a doozy here. This is one that's going to really restrict the ability to feel intimate, the ability to trust oneself, the ability to understand what power is. This is one of my favorite Saturn signs, but it is also the one that has a lot more power than it puts on, because Saturn in Scorpio is... If Saturn rules structure, it rules our bosses, it rules capitalism, it rules the elite, it rules corporations, it rules structures that are long-lasting. And Scorpio's there. What ends up happening is that we see an experience where Saturn wants you to be powerful and have a place in the world and be a boss. But with Scorpio, it's almost like you have to be aware of the unethical ways that people get there. So this is a big one for working in government. Saturn in Scorpio is probably one of the, if not the largest indicator that I have seen of working in government or working for government, whether it's, law enforcement. I see that a lot with Scorpio placements, is law enforcement and working within like legal kind of battles in that regard. Because the thing about Scorpio is it wants to have power, and what better way to have power in a structured society than being, having a place in the world that simply your place in the world simply gives you power, right? So with Saturn and Scorpio, we see people that are driven to become doctors, become lawyers, become law enforcement officers, become politicians, people that have the place they hold in the world. This is also true for Pluto in the 10th house as well. The place they hold in the world gives them power. And they have this immense responsibility to really utilize that power in a very, very, very ethical way. And it's hard because power can corrupt. And I think Saturn in Scorpio is more than aware of the corruption that power can bring and the greed and things of that nature. And it's something that I have found time and time again that Saturn in Scorpio individuals will experience things that are they abuse, or they see the abuse of power structures, right? I know someone very, very close to me who has Saturn in Scorpio, and they were very much abused by a law enforcement officer, right? When they were going through their Saturn return, they were very much abused by a law enforcement officer, and that was something that allowed them to really honestly, it made them distrust authority very deeply for obvious reasons, because then it makes you wonder what protections those people may have that are unethical, and they're overusing their power, or using their power in the wrong way, right? And with Saturn and Scorpio, there's some sort of wounding around power structures and working for people and working with people. And like I said, there's a lot of government disempowerment and empowerment. So I see Saturn and Scorpio as people that get really fed up with government and really fed up with the systems that are in place. But in the same time, Saturn and Scorpio wants them to, I don't want to say be a part of those systems, but infiltrate those systems, change those systems, radicalize those systems in a way that no other Saturn sign can really do. This is very much when you have enough power in any sense of the word, you end up being brought into spaces of larger influence, and that's something that Saturn and Scorpio just naturally is going to bring over time. It does depend on the aspects, of course, kind of how this is also flavored, but Saturn and Scorpio really, really desires to have power in a very large structured society, and these are the bosses, these are the CEOs, these are the ones that want to be at the top because they know that it is a broken system, and they understand the game, and they want to make sure that they can change the rules. So there is a lot of secrets these people have, a lot of government secrets, just a lot of secrets in general. They know a lot of different things. They know a lot of different people. They know these are the people that can just get pardoned or can get, expungements, and because of simply the information they know. Think about people that do plea deals where they release a bunch of information on other people's crimes. That is very Saturn and Scorpio. That is very, very Saturn and Scorpio, where they negotiate through the powerful secrets that they have to help them in a legal battle. There's very Saturn as well. Saturn is also very legal battles. So there can be a lot of legal battles, or just understanding legality, understanding business, that comes with having Saturn in Scorpio that other Saturn signs do not have. Because although Saturn is exalted in Libra, does very well in Libra, in Scorpio it also does well, but it does well because it's had to persevere, and it's had to break those systems and really dismantle them. And this is where I think, honestly, out of all the Scorpio placements, this is the one that has the longest lesson relative to ethics and ethical use. Because the thing is, as I said earlier, power tends to corrupt. And with Scorpio, you're going to be powerful. And Saturn wants you to understand that over time, over many, many, many years. And so you may not understand that you became the very thing that you despised or that you hated, whether it be an embodiment of your father or your boss, or this capitalist system, or this elite system, and this kind of top-down structure that is relative to Saturn. You became that, and you don't want to become that, right? And there's a very powerful energy that you have with Saturn and Scorpio. And like I said, I think this Scorpio sign, or the Scorpio planet, has probably the most prominent lesson around ethics and morals, because they're going to be tested so consistently, and they're going to be brought up in such a larger spaces to manage different things. And it's like knowing the corporate secrets, knowing the things that can dismantle and destroy. And I spoke on this with Mars in Scorpio as well, because this is where you get a lot of ammunition. And what do you do with it, right? Do you use it? Do you not? And the more you are ethical with it and you don't necessarily follow that destructive impulse, the better. And I think with Saturn and Scorpio, they understand that a lot of people that get high up in places in the world have a lot of secrets, have a lot of things that they hold onto and take to their graves that they could use to destroy and further their things. And some of them may do that behind closed doors. And I think with Saturn and Scorpio, there's more of an awareness of that because they've either experienced that, they've sensed that, they've seen it, they've done it themselves. There's a sense of like structural disempowerment and then re-empowerment. So it's a very it's an intense one. And this is one of those Saturn placements that I really, really respect, because I respect all Saturn placements, but this one I respect a lot more because it has a level of depth to it because of what it is naturally required to do when it's in Scorpio that other Saturn signs don't have. And it's about really using their influence to either push their own agenda or push their own success in their own career, or to really empower others through their leadership, through their career. And that's the thing you'll see here. There's going to be something in regards to leadership and being the right leader, being the right boss. These are people that will be, especially after the Saturn return, they're going to be bosses like nobody's business. And they're really going to understand how to trust people and trust their own power and trust how much they can actually do with people. So there is a lot of power there in a lot of different ways. And I really think that those of you that have Saturn and Scorpio, use your power wisely as you go up the corporate ladder or whatever ladder that may be. Because Saturn and Scorpio, it's still Saturn in a Martian sign. So it does have a little bit of a difficulty similar to how it does in Aries, with Saturn being in a Martian sign in Aries. Now, when Saturn's in another Martian sign of Scorpio, it has a little bit of a different taste to it, but it is still about that impulse control, similar to what I said with the Mars in Scorpio, where it's about controlling that toxic desire to get to the top through unethical means, or to have a unethical or interwoven conversation. The thing with Saturn and Scorpio, if you get interwoven with the wrong people, or you do the wrong thing, and I say the wrong thing in air quotes, meaning like you intentionally harm, because you think that's what's going to give you a one-up and help you. Don't do that. Don't do that as a Saturn and Scorpio. Do not do that, because that will... This is someone who, prior to their Saturn return, and maybe during their Saturn return as well, there's a lot of like legal battles and legal issues that may come up that they feel like they didn't do much, right? But they interlocked their karma with someone else. And that's the thing, Saturn and Scorpio, it's about really being aware of who you're interweaving your karma with, and who you're choosing to have as an enemy, or who you're choosing to fight with, or who you're choosing to kind of spar with, or have power over, or attempt to have power over. Because with Saturn and Scorpio, if you choose to fight, you're going to be fighting for a while. If you choose to misuse your power, you're going to be on a legal battle for like a very, very, very long time. Very long time. These are people that would have like large, long custody battles, because they need to really understand the power dynamics that are at play in a legal judiciary system, in a capitalist system, in a top-down structure. People that have money have more influence system, but they also need to understand their trusting of others. And that's where we'll see a lot of stuff with Saturn and Scorpio around trust issues, like a lot of it. When we see stuff in the 8th house and in Scorpio, there's mad trust issues because they have been burned, they have been mishandled, misused, abused, taken advantage of, muted, right? And Saturn and Scorpio is one of those placements that just, if you choose to be the one that recreates the trauma that was created to you, you best believe that you're going to be in that. You're going to be in that for a while. Like, and I'm smirking because it's something that I think some Saturn Scorpios don't understand, that that was necessary, or that process is necessary for them to really understand the power of who they trust and what they do with the knowledge and the secrets that they have. Because Saturn and Scorpio, like in Saturn in the 8th house and Scorpio placements in general, they have secrets. They have a lot of secrets. They have a lot of things that they can do with those secrets that can dismantle and destroy. However, it's about making sure that you are transmuting those desires and transmuting those secrets somehow, or find an outlet for them that allows you to empower businesses. I know someone who is a Saturn and Scorpio individual who literally does consultations from a energy healing perspective for corporate CEOs and bosses. It's a very Saturn, Scorpio, Pluto, Capricorn, like very much that energy is very Pluto 10th house. It's all the energy of working towards something and towards proving one's power and one's depth of power. So these are the ones that will have multiple businesses and see those businesses, either their businesses or their business partners' businesses, fail and rebuild and fail and rebuild and fail and rebuild, and have these really big debts potentially for that they need to then learn how to work with. And that is through the process of, through that process of struggle and through disempowerment and not aligning with other people and not, giving your power away, especially getting into business with people with a Saturn in Scorpio is a big deal. It's a very big deal. So if you have your Saturn in Scorpio and you're getting into business with someone, be cautious, especially if you're prior to your first Saturn return. Obviously, most people that have Saturn in Scorpio aren't even 14 at the point of this current video coming out. So I'm not really worried about that generation as of right now. And the previous generation of Saturn and Scorpios have already gone through the first Saturn return, so they've already experienced a lot. So those are the primary ones that would be kind of watching this video for at least the next 8 years or so, until that Saturn's opposition may happen, and then maybe some 14-year-olds will start watching this. I don't know at that point. But Saturn and Scorpio, there's so much structural business changes, and being aware of what you are bringing to the table, and more importantly, what someone else is bringing, and having that clearly defined boundaries. Have boundaries. If you have Saturn in the 8th house, if you have Saturn in Scorpio, have boundaries. Please have boundaries with other people, and understand that you need to know who to trust and how far to trust somebody. Because with Saturn and Scorpio, especially Saturn and Scorpio, people will use you to their own agenda for their own career. Be aware of that. Scorpio placements have that happen in general as well. But Saturn and Scorpio, it's specifically career stuff. And this is where people can destroy your reputation, or attempt to destroy your reputation, or whatever it may be, destroy your career, destroy any of those things, because they want to see you fail. And Saturn is not going to let you fail. It might make it you really, really close to being destitute and being at the bottom of the thing, but you can really, really, really go further, right? The image I'm getting in my head is like someone who is, comes in with Saturn and Scorpio, and they're like a janitor. They're at the bottom of that thing, and they're treated like absolute garbage. And the thing about Saturn and Scorpio is it's that whole trope that we see about someone who is working like an entry-level job and busting their butt to get to where they want to get, and they end up surpassing those people that were spoken down to them. And I think the thing about Saturn and Scorpio that I think is more difficult than Saturn and Libra is the premise of respecting everybody at whatever level they are at, whether they're the CEO or they're the janitor. Being able to respect in that broad range. I think Saturn and Scorpio struggles with that only because they've specifically had issues with bosses, CEOs, those at the top of the structures. And I think it's very hard to maintain a level of respect of people that have, or whether people that have had, whether it's the government, whether it's, the people above you, whatever it may be. It's really difficult to learn how to trust someone and or a system that is representative of someone who has harmed you before. Very, very, very difficult to do that. And it's about reclaiming that power, reclaiming that part of yourself, reclaiming your distrust of systems and of structures and of top-down structures in specific and of your boss. And also just in general of who you do business with, who you trust, who you spend your time on, who you get intimate with. And I don't mean intimate in the sense of having a little fun. That's not what I mean. What I mean is bearing your soul, telling your trauma, sharing your darkness too. This is like a really, really intense placement, and it's who you share that intensity with. And Saturn is going to restrict the ability to do that for quite some time. It's going to make you really, really want to connect to people and want to really, really deeply dive into people. But at the end of the day, Saturn in Scorpio also needs to understand where those lines, where those boundaries are, and where your baggage becomes their baggage and their baggage becomes yours. And there's this sense of transference of karma that all Scorpio placements understand, all 8th house placements understand, because whether they can verbalize it or not. But Saturn in Scorpio, there's a lot more tangible lessons with this. So I urge you, if you have Saturn in Scorpio, Saturn in the 8th house, to really have clear boundaries and understand how to trust people, how to trust yourself with the depth that you can bring to other people. The 8th house and Scorpio are all about meeting yourself as deeply as you can so that you can meet others and help others through those trenches, help others through that darkness. And Saturn in Scorpio makes amazing leaders, amazing top people in their industry, because they don't want to be like their toxic boss and they don't want to be like the toxic person above them. And they also make amazing confidants, because like I said, they likely have a lot of secrets and a lot of powerful secrets that they can utilize, but it's about ensuring that they don't utilize that power and those secrets in ways that are detrimental to their business or could be detrimental to their business or their reputation. It's about ethics. It's about morals. It's about making sure that you are ethically and morally in line so that you are not perpetuating a traumatic system with the leadership that you're going to be given with Saturn and Scorpio. So just know that that's what it is. I'm sorry I'm really pushing this really hard. I just feel like it's really important to stress, because Saturn and Scorpio, you guys have so much power, and it's what you do with that power. Like this is true for all Scorpio placements, but Saturn is such a heavier one. It's such a heavier one, and it's really about understanding how to trust yourself to go into those really big spaces that you might feel threatened by, that you might feel triggered by, or that you might be activating, like triggering other people, and still hold strong and hold stable and know that you deserve to be in those places. Saturn and Scorpio also has like somewhat of an imposter syndrome too. Typically around the Saturn return, there's some sort of like imposter syndrome where you feel like you don't belong to be in those powerful places or have those powerful conversations or powerful connections. But Scorpio is going to give that to you the more you're using it the right way. That's the thing. Any Scorpio placement, 8th house placement, is going to give you more when you are using it in an empowered way, in a way that is not shrinking of yourself and hurting others or harming others in a similar fashion, because that shows that you're healed and you've done the work and you want to help others that are still at the same space or lower than you were. And so this is someone who works really, really hard. Like maybe they were at a restaurant serving a very long time in their 20s or whatever. Then they get to their Saturn return and they suddenly have this amazing affluent career, and they come back to that same restaurant and they end up giving, $1,000 tip, right? Or whatever it may be. That is a Saturn Scorpio individual. That is very much that, where they're like, I want to give back. If you give back with the power that you have, I promise you, Saturn and Scorpio, you will get more of it. You will get more power. You will utilize your power to help protect and defend and support other people's goals and resources and values and things. And also, I typically say this in all other ones, but for some reason this is coming really strong for Saturn and Scorpios. But there's a lot of stuff here with powerful careers around therapy, around therapeutic things. Psychoanalysts, doctors, psychologists are very Scorpio, very much aware of the darker parts of life. They also could be great mediums, great healers, great psychics, great diviners in a lot of different ways. So there's a lot of power, and it's funny because, like I said, with Saturn and Scorpio, the individual I referred to earlier that has Saturn in Scorpio, she is very much the embodiment of Saturn in Scorpio, where she is literally a very, 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 very strong healer and energy worker, and she is helping those at the top manage their energy, work with their energy, those sorts of things. It's very powerful, very, very powerful, very, very potent, and very much indicative of utilizing their power in a way that is helping themselves gain from other people and make a career out of other people's energy and other people's darkness, other people's trauma and psychology and deep, deep, deep stuff. And I really, really love it. And yeah, Saturn and Scorpio is such a power move. It really is. So if you have Saturn and Scorpio, please let me know how this experience has been for you. I'd love to hear your story. Most of you that have Saturn and Scorpio have your Chiron and Gemini as well. So I would love to hear how that is also playing into this part of it as well. And also too, of course, look to the Saturn's aspects, where Saturn is at, what house it's in, what it's aspecting, if it's with other planets, if it's aspecting other planets. And then, of course, look to your Mars placement as well to see how that's kind of also playing into this conversation here. And then if you have any questions about that and you want to kind of dive into this, feel free to put some information down below or comment, reach out to me, anything like that, and I will be glad to help you, guide you through your chart to help you understand more of this and more of where your power comes from, which is very, very deep and very, very great. And so just know that you have a lot of power and you definitely can use it, and it's about how you use it, really, with the Saturn and Scorpio. So that's it for Saturn and Scorpio. I will see you guys in the next part. We talk about specifically what Saturn means in the 8th house. Okay, so we have Saturn in the 8th house. So with Saturn in the 8th house, this is going to be quite similar to what I was saying earlier about Saturn and Scorpio. So if you have Saturn in the 8th house, I'd recommend you also kind of watch Saturn and Scorpio because there is some definite overlays in how the energy works. However, with Saturn in the 8th house, this is a lot more related to joint finances with somebody, merging with someone, trusting someone, working with someone, having a committed partnership with someone, and merging your finances, having a joint bank account, and the struggles that is to work with someone and managing someone else's money, managing investments, managing things that are financially not always yours or are kind of coming from someone else's means, whether it's through loans, debts, any sorts of like alimony or any sort of things that are being paid to you through other people's money and other people's means. That's very Saturn in the 8th house. Also, any like government things are going to be really interesting. Any government sort of payments or government sort of where you mix your money with government money. Taxes is obviously a part of that, but there's other ways that can be kind of brought in, right? If you're making money, you can make a lot of you could see someone with Saturn in the 8th that may go and do like a bankruptcy, and kind of really get rid of all of their debt and really like start anew. And that's something that can, interestingly enough, Saturn in bankruptcy actually is connected specifically to 7-year cycles, because if memory serves correctly, a bankruptcy stays on your credit report for 7 years, which is a very much Saturn cycle, and it could be anywhere between 7 and 14, but it does really wipe out a lot of that debt if that debt becomes too piled up. And so that's something you may see with Saturn in the 8th house. Loans are a really big thing, paying off your loans, learning how to manage and to maintain that. And so Saturn in the 8th can struggle with understanding how to do those things. However, as they learn that struggle, they learn that thing, they can actually make a lot of money through loaning people money as well as being loaned money. So they understand that process quite well with Scorpio placements, Scorpio and 8th house placements is how to utilize other people's resources, finances, energy to help them through their goal. And there's a lot of powerful things that they tend to find. But once again, similar to what I said with the Venus in Scorpio, it's a lot about being able to trust someone very deeply and to share with someone and to understand the responsibility of being merged with someone and working with someone. And I think that's something that just is really powerful. And there's a lot of lessons around this, around long-term goals with someone, long-term investments as well, might be something that is very, very crucial to learn as a Saturn in the 8th house person. Maybe they didn't come from a lot of money, or their family can't give them much money, or they're waiting very, very patiently for a lot of money to come to them that they won't get until, they're retired, right? That might be something as well where they have money locked away until they're retired or they reach a certain age as well. That's something you can see with Saturn in the 8th house, as well as Saturn in Taurus or Saturn Venus aspects as well can have that too. But Saturn in the 8th, it's a lot of more about, like I said, this intimate partnerships, this intimacy aspect, as well as loans and financing too. And so there is an aspect of it too with merging with businesses and merging with people's businesses and kind of knowing how to kind of analyze people's businesses and their kind of investments and things like that. there is a sense with that, and almost like financial planning can definitely, it is a very important thing with Saturn in the 8th house, is learning how to financially plan for something towards your goals, towards your aspirations, and know how to allocate the money in the correct way, allocate your energy, and also allocate other people's energy towards your goals. And this is so someone who can make a lot of money through getting a lot of funding, but then not knowing how to actually allocate it, or not having a plan to allocate it appropriately. So that's something you can see with Saturn in the 8th house, is a lot of the lessons around specifically knowing how to allocate the funds that are given to them responsibly, being very responsible with the loans that they are given and the money that they are given and gifted, or that they're expecting, they're working with. So because in this process, Saturn in the 8th house can be very, very powerful at learning how to use the system to their advantage, use loans and credit scores to their advantage to help propel them in their career. So these are people that over time are going to get better and better at managing and getting money from other sources, and getting support from other sources. But it's really about them being able to be very clear on what they're going to use that money for. And that's the thing, I think having a business plan or having a plan of action with financing, refinancing is really important. When we think about Saturn in the 2nd house as well as Saturn in the 8th house, these money houses, what I think is a really important thing to do is to be able to have an action plan of, if I have this much money, this is how much I'm allocating for this, how much I'm allocating for this, how much I'm allocating for this. And so with a loan or a credit card, being able to make sure that you're allocating within that spending limit, and not going above that, and making sure you have a budget. That's really important as well, is to maintain a budget, because Saturn's going to kind of keep teaching you that over and over again, kind of beating it into you, especially during that Saturn return, themes around specifically learning how to trust others, trust yourself with others, how deeply to go with someone when it's time to end something, when something has reached its lifespan. And inheritances are a really big thing. Like I said, Saturn the 8th, there's a lot of inheritance energy here, a lot of maybe fear of inheriting something as well, where there's almost a, like, I don't know how I'm going to manage when I get the house, or when I get the, the life insurance policy, or when I get, this really expensive thing that I know is going to be given to me, whether it's a car or a house or whatever. That's very much something that Saturn in the 8th can do. There's a fear around that. And the universe will not give you what you are not willing to or capable of managing and understanding, especially when it comes to Saturn. It's about making sure that you are understanding and willing to do the work that it relates to planning financially what you are expecting. And what you're willing to get, and making sure you have a solid plan of how to use your resources to get that thing, right? That's something that I think is really important with Saturn in the 8th, is managing your resources in a way that shows the universe that you are responsible enough to get more of it, and get more resources, get more power, get more financing. And then in the same vein, much like that, shifting this over to the intimacy part, it's a lot about being able to manage more intimate, more deeper, more intense conversations with people, and more like kind of really soul merging and trusting people, knowing how to manage that and manage your role in those deeper connections, those deeper relationships. Then by doing that, you're going to be given more and deeper and deeper and deeper. And there's so much depth with Saturn in the 8th house, but it comes with time, and it comes with your trust of yourself to go into other people's energy and know where the boundaries lie, and know how to really, really respect those boundaries, both within your own psyche as well as with whomever you are connected to for whatever reason. Saturn in the 8th house can be great readers and great healers, because they're willing to go through with someone and meet them where those people may not have met themselves, but where the Saturn in the 8th house individual may have done the work to know where that line is. And Saturn in the 8th is going to always push that boundary a little bit as they learn more about their psyche, learn about someone else's, and it's a very fragile and very difficult space to work in when it comes to the 8th house in Scorpio, is other people's karma, other people's energy, other people's interwoven psyches and their own traumas and their own baggage. It's very, very difficult to work with that. But Saturn in the 8th house wants you to consistently do the effort. And throughout time, you'll be able to understand the power of being able to trust people, and being able to go in and have a clear set of boundaries, of limits, of what you can and cannot do with a person. And this is where I really see like a non-negotiable being really important in regards to relationships, as well as kind of knowing when you've reached your limit in time with things, being very conscious of your time with other people as well, as very much a Saturn in general is time related, but Saturn in the 8th house is about respecting the energetic boundaries that you have within yourself to deal with and connect with other people, as well as the kind of respect of what someone else can handle relative to what you're bringing up. So that's more of like in the therapeutic sense or in the intimate sense, right? You're not gonna, on a first date, necessarily go in and tell all of these really intense things to somebody that are all about your intense trauma and start trauma dumping. A unevolved Saturn in the 8th house person can definitely do that because they're trying to be accepted in a very, very deep way. But it's about doing that incrementally and really slowly building that process and building that trust and building that intimate bond, because the more you are slowly going into connection with people and deep psychological bond with people, the more you are capable of understanding, as opposed to just jumping in and diving in. Because Saturn in the 8th house is going to be really upset at you if you do that, because it's going to say, okay, well, you dove this far and you kind of went to the, you went to the deep end, and now you kind of have to you have to stay there and you have to swim your way back. And it's going to be a lot more work now on the way back, right? It's going to hold you responsible now for that. And you're going to be lost at sea, or there's something to that effect, right? So just be aware that there is something with Saturn in the 8th of like the depth at which you jump into things. You're going to kind of be held accountable for that amount of depth and that amount of involvement and interwovenness that you get with people. Be aware of the level at which you are pursuing or connecting or intimately bonding with somebody in a traumatic, deep way. Be aware of those things and be aware of what they can handle, and more importantly, be aware of what you can handle. Because the Saturn in the 8th house, you're going to stretch that boundary, and you're going to incrementally kind of increase how much you can handle with someone else's psyche as well as your own when you get like interwoven into that regard. But be aware of where those lines are, and to be able to sense where those lines are. That's why, once again, Saturn in the 8th house is really good at having a career relative to 8th house things. So financial parts, financial kind of managing things is definitely a part of Saturn in the 8th house. But it can also be like a very intimate counselor, someone who's very aware of that, but that's because they've done the work. And Saturn in the 8th house, if you don't do the work, it's not going to reward you. You have to do the work and dive into the intimate, dark stuff and the deeper parts of life to really understand more about who you're here to be and what you're here to do with the power and the awareness that you have. So it's a lot about trusting people, learning how to deeply go into that trust, and trusting yourself to trust other people, and trust that you can go into these deeper, darker psychological realms and be able to come back from that. And in the same vein, trusting that you can go into the financial realms and the financial responsibilities and come back from that. But you're not going to be able to do that and get those things until you have specifically done the work to prove to yourself as well as to the universe that you are, even though they're one and the same, proven to yourself as well as to the universe that you are capable of handling those resources, handling what you're diving into, handling what you're being responsible for. So be aware of your financial responsibilities, be aware of your relational responsibilities, and also be aware that there is so much value that you have to bring to the table, and be aware of like your own psychological kind of hangups as well, your own psychological reasons that are stopping you or hindering you from going and connecting with people on a deeper level. There's so much power you have inside of you relative to connecting to people, where you can make a lot of money if you're willing to be vulnerable, if you're willing to open up, if you're willing to like really push that boundary. Once again, Saturn wants you to do it incrementally. Saturn wants you to slowly walk into the water as it gets deeper and deeper, to see how you are adjusting every single step of the way to get to that deep end. Saturn does not want you to dive into the deep end because you are thinking that you can handle whatever this is. It's going to really, really slow that down, and it's going to say, okay, you dove into the deep end. You gotta swim your way back, and you're going to be really, really tired, and you might not make it in the same way, and you're going to have to go under, and you're going to be a lot of trauma. There's going to be a lot of stuff, right? So just know you're going to be held accountable for how deep you go into things. So I wouldn't recommend getting a large loan. I wouldn't recommend getting a large, like getting potentially really like married or like something to that effect, really, really young age. I wouldn't recommend that. just because it's something that you're going to have to stick in it for the very, 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 very long term. There's people that will have very long commitments with people. And they're very loyal as well, which I think is really, really powerful. Now, I kind of yapped for all the Saturn in the 8th house portion, because I think I was just needed to get that out in and of itself. But obviously, Saturn's placement in the 8th is going to have a lot of differences of how it's going to affect this person, because Saturn is going to function differently in different signs in the 8th house. Now, I'm not going to go into every single one of these as much as I say that every time, but I probably am going to kind of touch on them as little as I can, because I've done Saturn in every single sign prior to Scorpio. So if you have your Saturn in any sign prior to Scorpio, so Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, or Libra, know that there's a Saturn video you can watch that will kind of explain more of this, and kind of just utilize your own perspective to kind of help you learn more about how this can particularly connect to the things I'm talking about with the Saturn in the 8th house, right? And then obviously this is Saturn Scorpio, and I haven't done anything about Saturn in Sag, Capricorn, Aquarius, or Pisces yet. So those I will be kind of talking about, but obviously those videos will be coming out in the next couple seasons here. But I did want to just let you know that all the Saturn videos are already made that are prior to this, and I do not want to, for lack of a better word, in the Saturnian individual that I am, I don't want to waste my time and waste anyone else's time on these when those videos have already been made and they're already there, and they're a lot more in depth than I'm going to go on these little niche stuff. And if you do have questions about your specific Saturn placement in the 8th house that's not Scorpio, and you want to just put it in the comments and like, hey, I have Saturn in this one, what do you think? Please do that, because I would love to hear that as well, because I don't want to go too deep into this right now, just for sake of time, because it's Saturn and that's what Saturn wants. But like I said, Saturn in certain signs are going to function very differently in the 8th house. Saturn in a Martian ruled sign, so either Aries or Scorpio, is going to be a lot about fighting for, this is where you see a lot more of the deep dive, the kind of impulsivity, right, with that, where there's a lot of impulsive kind of going deeper into commitments with things that they need to then be held accountable for. That's something that Saturn will do in a Martian sign, and definitely hold you accountable for in that regard. And then Saturn in a Venus ruled sign, this is similar to what I said earlier about kind of expecting to receive a large sum of money, right? Or receive a large sort of inheritance, or a large sort of responsibility with a relationship, or an arranged marriage can also be seen with Saturn and Libra in the 8th house. So just know that there's something there with there's almost like a promise of something financially or relationally stabilizing in the future, that needs to be worked on up until that point. So once again, this is like the financial part of it as well. Now, Saturn in Mercury ruled signs, so Gemini and Virgo, they're going to have a lot of information they're going to want to bring. So these are going to be really, really more of the therapists than anything else with Saturn in the 3rd house. These are the ones that are going to be the psychoanalytical people that are really working on understanding that, as well as the ones that do a lot of business contracts and understand that process of the legality of loans and credit and paying back, things like that, as well as just a lot of understanding about psychoanalytics. Like I had said, there's mental quality and mental responsibility and verbal responsibility and analytical kind of skill set that is brought into the 8th house, and it's kind of more so about the analytical, like analyzing the person in front of you, analyzing someone's finances, analyzing a loan, planning something, writing a contract, doing those things. Be very careful with the contracts you sign, especially with Saturn and Gemini more specifically than Saturn and Virgo in the 8th house. Be more careful with what you say and what you speak on, because you will be held accountable for those words. And that's, once again, watch those videos if you have those. Saturn in Cancer and in Leo. This one is an interesting one here, because we're going to see more so with Saturn in Leo than Saturn in Cancer. This is actually going to be the chart ruler for this particular chart, because with Saturn in Leo, this is going to be a Capricorn rising. So it's going to have a pretty prominent energy here that is really about knowing your place, knowing how, once again, how deep you can show up. This is where there could be a gambling issue. There could be some sort of speculation issue where they're speculating something, and they're hoping that they can, like they're gambling. This is someone who gets a big loan and it doesn't work out like they were hoping, and they have to pay it back. That's something that I would see more here with Saturn and Leo. Saturn in Cancer similarly, but this is way more on the family responsibility side of things. So this is like a really deep family trauma, but trauma in the sense of like needing to constantly deal with and work for the family and all those things. And like family business energy too can be here with Saturn and Cancer, working for the family, working towards the family's business, working towards the acquisition of the family or acquisition of the home. That's the kind of thing I was talking about earlier, where you're like fearful of receiving a home or receiving an asset like that. So be careful of that one. And then Saturn and Jupiter sign in Sag, as well as Pisces in the 8th house. This is one that is very interesting here, because we're gonna see this as someone who has a belief that is really what's stopping them from their goal. So it's interesting because this is also like I'm going to school, I want to study this thing, I want to try this thing, what's the meaning of all this stuff? This is where these are the ones that go and study for a very long time to master the 8th house themes. So think about the ones that go and study and become doctors. These are the doctors, these are the therapists, these are the ones that become psychologists, these are the ones that study and want to find the meaning behind all of that darkness, and they become really good at that as well. Saturn and Pisces, there's something here with international trade as well as Saturn and Jupiter sign in general has that. Yeah, the Saturn videos are going to be just a lot longer because they're Saturn, so I'm going to go into those in the near future anyway. I don't want to go too deep into them, just for, like I said, for brevity's sake. And then kind of to go back a second, Saturn and Virgo, I want to kind of re-reference that as well. So similarly to the Saturn and Leo being the chart ruler, Saturn and Virgo is actually going to be the chart ruler for Aquarius risings. If you have your Saturn and Virgo in the 8th house, there is a pretty prominent energy because you yourself are being brought into the 8th house. And so you are going to have a lot more to say here and a lot more to kind of perfect and figure out how to work with. So there is a lot more financial planning that is required of this placement than there are other Saturn in the 8th house ones. A lot more of kind of really knowing how to manage someone else's finances and maybe being given someone's finances and needing to kind of really, really work with it and kind of tease it out. So just beware of that one. And then finally, Saturn in Saturn signs, so either Capricorn, Aquarius in the 8th house. This is positive because Saturn's in its own sign, but much like the other domicile placements I spoke about earlier in the series, so if we were talking about like Mars in Scorpio, Venus in Libra, Mercury in either Gemini or Virgo, it almost makes Saturn a lot stronger here, where these lessons become a lot more intense because Saturn knows how to run the ship that it is running in the 8th house. So it's a lot about what you use your money for. And Saturn in Capricorn, this is a really like a long-term goal, a long-term business, a long-term working towards something here. This is more relative to like the Saturn Scorpio portion as well. I'd recommend you watch the Saturn Scorpio portion as well with this one. If you have Saturn and Capricorn in the 8th house specifically. Saturn Aquarius, there is a sense of crowdfunding here, getting money through really unique means. As someone who has Saturn opposite that in the 2nd house, there's a lot of interesting ways that I do make money. Saturn in the 8th house in Aquarius also has that same way, but it's some through other people's money, other people's energy, and other people's involvement, other people's business. So almost helping people with their goals. This could be a great someone who works for making grants for people, helps people support their businesses, is a very Saturn and Aquarius in the 8th house energy, helping support people's influence and build people's influence as well with Aquarius. So just know that that's part of it as well. But yeah, that's really most of it. I'm not going to go too deep into those because, like I said, I'm going to do a lot deeper dives into those Saturn videos later in those videos. But I want you to know that Saturn is really, really patient, and it takes a long time to master whatever Saturn's trying to get you to learn. And I'd really recommend that you watch whatever Saturn sign you have, either if it's already come out or if it's coming out, watch those as well. And also, if you have Saturn in Scorpio or in the 8th house, please let me know how this has been for you and how this landed. Really, I want to hear how this went, because I felt like I was like hitting something really, really deep here, which I'm really grateful for being able to do that. And I really hope this resonated with some of you, and I hope, or all of you for that matter. And I hope that, yeah, I want to hear how it is. I want to hear what your story is. Like I said, if you have your Saturn in the 8th house, but it's not any of the signs, or you want more depth in that, please, please, please put in the description box, not description box, but in the comments down below, what specifically your experience has been and what you want to learn more about with that. And then, of course, with Saturn in the 8th, look to your Saturn's ruler. So if your Saturn is in a Mercury ruled sign, look to your Mercury. If your Saturn's in a Martian ruled sign, look to your Mars, right? For more clues onto how this is kind of working in your kind of specific makeup. And then finally, in the description box below, you're going to see all my links, all my things. If you guys are interested in anything with me, whether it's booking, whether it's learning, whether it's just a live consultation, anything like that, any of my more videos like that, make sure to check out down there. Also, make sure to check out the playlist because that is where all these videos are stored, and you can watch literally any of them that I have made, and they are quite long. And I'm just really grateful to be able to do this. This is such a enjoyable series and such an enjoyable project that I have been doing, and I am so grateful to be doing this. I really, really am. And so I love being able to do this. I've been able to help people, and I hope this helps you in some way, shape, or form, or helps you help someone in that regard too. So thank you so much for watching this. And of course, if you like this video, please put me a like on there, put a comment down below. Let YouTube know that you like this, because that's going to help me out. This is what I do for a living. This is one of the things I really, really, really love talking about, and I love it. So I'm just happy to be able to provide this value and help people through this knowledge. And I just appreciate you for being here, and I hope this helped you, and I appreciate you so much. Have a great night, and I will see you guys in the next one, which is going to be specifically Sagittarius week. So I'll see you in quite a while for Sagittarius week. But yeah, I love you guys. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.